Good morning, guys. Today we are going to talk about all things tomatoes. Most of you who know me know that I'm completely addicted. Thanks to my dad. He was the tomato king, and his tomatoes were always beautiful every year. And we really enjoyed them. It was like a challenge for him, and it's become such for me. I've been pruning today. I think I've mentioned before, I use cattle panels as support for my tomatoes. I just do that because cages take up so much room. I think cages are much easier because you don't have to tie. But this is what works for me in the size garden that I have. I'm growing this year 38 tomatoes, I believe. I've added a couple of different ones. These that I'm pruning this morning are German Johnsons. I'm really impressed with these tomatoes. The stalks, I don't know if you can see that, but they're very, very stout. They almost stand up on their own, which is something that's not common with tomatoes. The tomatoes' natural inclination is to vine along the ground, so you really have to tie them up. If you have them in a cage, they will just naturally climb it. So as you can see, this is pretty far away from my cattle panel. I'm going to start by tying it, and I just use twine or tape. I don't do a tight tie, I just want to support it. So I'm going to go in here and find my cattle panel. Pull my twine through, and then I'm just going to tie it and pull that stalk up to the cattle panel as closely as I can without breaking anything. Now we're going to prune it. Pruning is painful for you because, as you can see, I have all this beautiful growth, but it's too much. You don't want to get too crazy with the pruning because the fruit that is developing will get sunburned, and you don't want to do that. But along the bottom, it's really important to prune so you have good ventilation. The tomatoes are blooming like crazy, and when I'm out here working on the tomatoes, I just give my cattle panel a little shake. Tomatoes are self-pollinating, so if you just give them a little shake, the blooms will pollinate and you'll have a lot of fruit. That's great because you're not dependent on the bees to pollinate your tomatoes. You can just give them a little shake and they'll do great. So we're going to start pruning this German Johnson with anything close to the ground that's going to touch the ground. First, I'm going to pull out these watergrass. And like I said, pruning is painful. It's like taking your child in for their first haircut. You will cry, but it is for the best. If you need tomato plants, you can take what you have pruned and propagate it just by putting it in water, and it will root and you can plant it. So we're just going to get everything. I prune about 8 inches up from the bottom. That's the plant next door, so I'll prune all of that when I move down. I don't know if you're aware, but tomatoes, people actually think that they come from Italy, but they don't. They're actually from South America. And the Spanish conquistadors were introduced to tomatoes from the Aztec, and they brought them back to Europe, and then they just spread around the world. I wanted to show you some cat-facing blooms, what that is, and I'm just going to pluck this one off. I have a couple of blooms that are cat-faced. I actually will leave most of them because I love cat-facing. What cat-facing is a double bloom. As you can see, that is a double bloom that is grown together, and it will make a tomato. If you've ever bought a tomato or grown a tomato where the bottom looks like there's several different tomatoes fused together, that is a result of a cat-faced bloom. And I just like to leave them to see what's going to happen. There's nothing wrong with the tomato. They are more prone to getting disease or getting attacked by insects, but as far as quality, they taste the same. And I just think it's cool to see what they'll come out looking like. So that's a cat-faced bloom. These German Johnsons, like I said, have been really impressive for me this year. I've never grown them before, and they are an indeterminate variety. There are two different varieties, indeterminate and determinate. An indeterminate tomato will grow and produce until the season is over. I don't necessarily think that you get more fruit from an indeterminate than a determinate. A determinate will grow a certain height and they'll have one good crop and then they're done. So I always plant determinates. A German Johnson is a heirloom tomato. I do plant a couple of different types of hybrids. The difference between a hybrid and an heirloom is that you can't save seeds, or you shouldn't save seeds from a hybrid. That's two different tomatoes or more that are cross-pollinated. They are not genetically modified, but they are cross-pollinated. And what happens if you save seeds from those hybrid tomatoes, the next year, you're not going to know what you're going to get. And as you continue to save seeds, you may get something that's just totally not in line with the original plant. So my supersonics, which I love to grow for canning, and the Goliaths, which I love to grow for size, just for fun, they are both hybrid tomatoes. Everything else I grow is heirloom, and I save the seeds every year, and I start my seeds. This year, my tomato seeds got knocked off by a squirrel, so I ended up buying some. German Johnsons were one of the varieties that I purchased this year. Right now, everything looks so great. The spring has been really dry and hot, which for tomatoes is great. I haven't seen much disease. I did see some fungus gnats this morning, and if I can find one, I will show you what they look like. They're so tiny, I'm not even sure that you would be able to see it, but it's a tiny, tiny gnat. and they actually come from the soil. And what you can do to take care of those is to mix a gallon of water with a third of that gallon peroxide. So I put in a whole, I think it's like a 16-ounce bottle of peroxide into a gallon of water, and you just pour it around the base of your tomato plants. And that will kill the fungus in the soil. It will also oxygenate your roots and kill the gnats, the larvae for the gnats that are in the ground. So that's how you take care of that. The other thing that's pretty common with tomatoes is leaf curling. That can be caused from different things, lack of water or lack of consistent watering. That's why I like to use soaker hoses on my tomatoes. It's really important that you get consistent, deep watering. Otherwise, your fruits will crack. And blight is another thing that's very common with tomatoes. You'll start seeing just wilting of your plants, the foliage of your plants, and they will just start drying up and dying. And if you get blight on a plant, if it's late in the season, I just try and trim it off and save the plant until the fruit has all ripened, and then I'll pull it. If it's early in the season, you need to just cut your losses, pull that plant, otherwise it will just start spreading to all of your other plants. So that is it for all things tomatoes. If you have any questions, just post them in the comments or message me or text me. There's so much fruit on my tomatoes this year already. I'm so excited to see what is going to come with our tomato crop this year. I can see a lot of salsa and spaghetti sauce making in my future. I don't know if you can see this very well. So pretty. These are the cherry tomatoes. And you can see all the babies. Okay, guys. Have a good day. The other big culprit that's going to be coming to your tomato plants will be the evil hornworm. And when I find one, I will show you how to deal with it. Happy growing.